The Crimson Tide of New England. I'm typing this with hands that don't quite feel like mine anymore. My knuckles are raw, and there is a dark, copper-tasting crust under my fingernails that I've been trying to scrub out with a toothbrush for an hour. It's not working. I need to get this out before the sun goes down completely, because once the light vanishes, the fever comes back. It started 4 days ago. Me, Miller, and Jax were driving back from a disastrous camping trip upstate. It had rained for 72 hours straight, turning the woods into a soup of gray mud. The cheap rental sedan we were in smelled like wet dog and stale gas. Miller was fast asleep against the passenger window, his breathing heavy and fogging up the glass, while Jax was hunched over the steering wheel, squinting through the rhythmic slap of the windshield wipers. I was in the back, staring out at the jagged coastline of New England. The Atlantic looked like boiling oil under the moon. I just wanted to be back in my brick apartment in the city. I wanted a hot shower, a delivery pizza, and a locked door. "Hey," Jax muttered, his voice cutting through the hum of the engine. "GPS just lost signal." "Which fork was it?" "Keep left, I think," I grunted, too exhausted to care. We ended up on a narrow, unpaved road that bled directly toward the cliffs. The trees down here were different, twisted, skeletal things that seemed to lean over the car. And then, looming out of the coastal fog, we saw it. It wasn't a castle, but an old, abandoned whaling station from the 1800s. A massive, rotting wooden structure sitting on a bed of black rocks, surrounded by a forgotten family plot of lopsided tombstones. The sea spray had eaten away at the wood, leaving it looking like the ribcage of a dead whale. Jack slowed the car down. Miller stirred in the passenger seat, adjusting his glasses. "What the hell is that smell?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. It smelled like old salt, rot, and copper. "Let's check it out," Jax said, a sudden, weird spark in his eyes. He loved urban exploring. The stupider the location, the better. "No way, man," Miller complained. "It's midnight. We have a 6-hour drive tomorrow." "Come on," Jax pushed, looking back at me. "Leo, back me up. Last night of freedom." I looked at the skeletal ruins. Part of me felt a deep, sickening dread, but a larger part of me was numb from hours of driving. "Quick walk," I shrugged. 5 minutes. We parked on the dead grass. A rusted iron sign hung crookedly from a post, "Blackwood property. No trespassing." The air outside was freezing. Our boots crunched on fragments of seashells and old bone as we walked toward the gaping dark of the structure's entrance. The roof had collapsed in the center, letting the cold moonlight pour down into a massive room filled with rusted iron vats, the kind they used to boil blubber in. We split up slightly, the beams of our phone flashlights cutting through the heavy mist inside. I wandered near the back, where the floorboards gave way to a sheer drop down to the ocean rocks below. That's when I heard the breathing. It wasn't human. It sounded like a wet, heavy bellows, coming from the shadows behind one of the rusted iron vats. I froze, my flashlight beam shaking. Two eyes caught the light. They were wide, bloodshot, and completely yellow, set into a face that looked like melting gray leather. The thing was naked, its limbs impossibly long and segmented like an insect's, clinging to the rotting wooden beams of the wall. "Guys!" I tried to whisper, but the sound died in my throat. The creature didn't roar. It dropped from the beam with a sickening thud and skittered toward me on all fours, its elongated fingers clicking against the damp wood. I screamed and bolted. "Run! Get to the car!" I yelled, crashing past Jax, who looked confused until he saw the gray blur pursuing me. We sprinted through the ruins, but the thing was blindingly fast. Just as we cleared the threshold into the graveyard, a heavy, cold mass slammed into my back. I hit the mud hard, the wind knocked out of me. I rolled over just in time to see a maw of jagged, needle-like teeth descending toward my face. In a panic, I threw my left arm up. The creature's jaws clamped down on my forearm. The pain was blinding, a searing, hot agony that felt like liquid fire pouring into my veins. I screamed, using my right fist to smash repeatedly into the side of its rubbery, hairless skull. It let out a wet hiss, releasing my arm and skittering back into the darkness of the tombstones. Jax and Miller grabbed my shirt, dragging me to my feet. We scrambled into the sedan, Jax slamming on the gas before the doors were even fully shut. In the rear-view mirror, as we tore down the dirt road, I saw it standing upright under a solitary streetlight. It looked almost like a man now, tall and skeletal, watching our tail lights fade into the fog. We didn't go to the hospital. I was terrified of the questions, the police, the quarantine. Miller used a basic first aid kit from the car to wrap my arm in tight gauze. The weird thing was, by the time we reached the city limits, the excruciating pain had completely faded into a dull, throbbing itch. I told my friends I was fine. We said our goodbyes, and I locked myself in my apartment. I fell into a deep, feverish sleep for 16 hours. When I woke up tonight, the world had changed. My sheets were soaked in a thick, foul-smelling sweat, but I didn't feel sick. I felt electric. I stood up, and my movements were incredibly fluid, completely devoid of the usual aches and stiffness. Then, the sensory overload hit me. I could hear the frantic heartbeat of a pigeon nesting on my windowsill. I could smell the grease from the fast food joint 3 blocks away. But worse than that, I could smell the blood in my own bandages. I ripped the gauze off my arm. The deep puncture wounds were gone, replaced by thick, silvery scars that looked weeks old. I flaked off a piece of dried scab, and without thinking, I put it on my tongue. It tasted like pure euphoria. A violent spasm shook my jaw, and my mouth filled with a thick, heavy saliva. The hunger that hit me next wasn't in my stomach, it was in my teeth. My molars felt loose, pushing against my gums as if trying to grow. I couldn't eat normal food. I tried a slice of bread, and it tasted like literal ash. I threw up a glass of water. Before I knew what I was doing, I was out the window, sliding down the rusty metal of the fire escape with an agility I shouldn't possess. My bare feet didn't care about the cold concrete of the alleyway. The darkness wasn't dark anymore, it was a sharp, vivid gray. I hunted a stray cat first. I caught it in midair as it tried to leap over a dumpster. The warmth of its blood sliding down my throat was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. But it wasn't enough. It was like putting a single drop of water on a dying man's tongue. I found myself near the park on the edge of the neighborhood. A guy was walking back from the subway station, wearing a heavy winter coat, his head buried in his phone. I stayed in the deep shadows of the oak trees, pacing him. I could hear the rhythmic, heavy thud of his heart. I could smell the iron in his veins. My vision blurred into a deep crimson. He must have heard a twig snap because he stopped, turning around. "Hello, is someone there?" I didn't answer. I stepped out from behind the tree, letting the pale moonlight hit my face. He took one look at me, at my eyes, at the posture of my body, and his face went stark white. He turned to sprint, but he was moving in slow motion compared to me. I hit him at full speed, driving him into the damp grass. I clamped a hand over his mouth to muffle the scream, feeling his jaw strain against my palm. My teeth sank deep into the soft tissue of his neck. The rush of hot crimson filled my mouth, and a wave of absolute peace washed over my mind. I don't know how long I stayed there in the dark park. I only snapped out of it when I heard the distant, high-pitched wail of a siren. I left him there under the trees, scrambling up the side of a brick building using my fingernails, which are now long, thick, and curved, and ran back to my apartment. The sun is about to come up now. The crimson fog in my brain is clearing, leaving behind a cold, paralyzing terror. I am staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My pupils are almost gone, replaced by a wide, predatory amber. I killed a man tonight. And the worst part, the thing that is making me shake so hard I can barely hit the keys on this laptop, is that I can't wait for the sun to go down so I can do it again.